Good evening and welcome to week 2, 3 and out. I'm Stucky, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host Colin Wilson. Today we will go 3 downs and then go for it on 4th down. We'll talk about our favorites, our favorite underdog money lines, our favorite bets of the weekend, and start on 1st down with some Friday Night Lights. So let's get right into it. We'll talk about the 2 FBS versus FBS games. Not a lot of college football on the weekday. I think that has to do with the NFL. NFL's coming out party with games on Thursday and Friday. They are just taking over every possible day that they can. So only 2 FBS versus FBS matchups during the week. Let's start with Duke and Northwestern. As of the time we're recording this, the total sitting around 37. Northwestern, small home favorite. I was waiting on this total. Some books opened at 45, I believe, and came all the way down across 37. I wanted the over, and I was just going to wait on the weather. Right, this new Northwestern Stadium, which is beautiful. I can't wait to watch this game just from an optics perspective on the lake in prime time against Duke. But I just thought this came down way too much. And, the weather can be a little finicky on the lake. So I was going to watch the wind. It doesn't look crazy. But Duke wants to run a ton of tempo. Their offense looked a little better as the game went on. Granted, it was against Elon. And, Northwestern, new quarterback, they kind of got their feet under them going up against a pretty good Miami of Ohio defense. I thought their offense looked a little better as the game went on. It's a scary over, but I think at 37 or better, it's a super low number for, when you consider the pace that Duke wants to use for me. So I'm going to get on the over. Maybe if the wind is howling, I'll look for a live over, but I thought this total came down too much. Colin, what are you seeing between Northwestern and Duke?
I agree with you. I mean, what you're going to need in this game is for Malik Murphy, the quarterback for Duke, to hit some explosive plays like he did against Elon to get to this over. There are 15-mile-an-hour crosswinds here at Ryan Field. I think we might need to inspect that a little bit more now that they've taken out essentially the side of the seats that are up against Lake Michigan. So not sure if the wind direction still applies. We'll keep our eyes on that. But,
And it could
Malik
change
Murphy,
quickly. Like you just never
yeah,
know. Like a day or two out, right on the lake, that it could be much worse. It could not be. So it's hard to say even 24 hours out.
we're not even to October. We're already talking about wind direction. You got to love it. So, listen, Malik Murphy was pretty good against Elon last week. 26 of 40, 3 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. Those 2 turnover-worthy plays came on pressured pockets, so there was a little bit of a struggle there for him. First-time starter, first game, kind of expected. But there was no rushing attack from Duke whatsoever. 2.2 yards per play on 27 attempts. They were stuffed 11 times. They were stuffed well over the national average of 30%. And the Duke defense was great, and it should have been with Manny Diaz as your head coach. Elon averaged 2.3 overall yards per play. So you would need, the Duke defense to let up a little bit from what they showed against Elon, and that might happen with Northwestern. Northwestern's running a heavy RPO with Vanderbilt transfer Mike Wright coming in here. On 11 third-down attempts last week, Northwestern was pushed so far back in standard downs. Their average distance in third downs was 10.2 yards. That is large. But Wright ran the RPO, 9 rushes for 65 yards, 3 rushing attempts, went for over 15. He is explosive on the ground. He just can't throw the ball. Now, Cam Porter, the running back, not really a jump. And what kind of juice that he has, he averaged 2.3 yards after contact. Pretty pedestrian there. I think the total has come down too far. It's a number that I would project about 40.5. I took Northwestern on the cheap money line when it opened up. I feel that this is a 3-point battle. I don't think either of these teams are going to win by more than 3 points. So I think you're good if you can get a cheap money line here on Northwestern. And if Duke hits 3 or 3.5 before the market closes, or I can get it live, I will come back on that because it is going to be low scoring. But I agree with you. It's going to go over the 37 that's out there right now. And I like Northwestern at home to pull this off.
Yeah, I would certainly lean hard Duke's way if it gets to a field goal or above. Still, it's hard to, and this is the challenge not only with week 1, but with week 2. and it's going to carry over to week 3 as well, is that all of the roster turnover in college football, evaluating, determining whether you overreact, how aggressively to update power ratings, especially when teams play group of 5 opponents. In week 1, we're going to see a lot in week 2 as well. So that's the challenge in today's new college football landscape, much more than it had been in the past, with just these just aggressive roster overhauls that we're seeing across the sport. The other FBS matchup on Friday night is between SMU and BYU. SMU around 11 and a half point favorite here, total sitting a touch over 55. BYU, their quarterback Retzlaff, I think, exceeded expectations last week. Granted, it was against an FCS team, but it wasn't a complete bottom feeder. SMU, I'm having trouble getting a true read on them through 2 weeks. The story on SMU the past few seasons is they struggled when they stepped up in class. They dominated teams that are a step below them. BYU, they're kind of in the middle, right? Transitioning still to a Power 4 team. I do expect improvement from the BYU defense under Jay Hill, a coordinator I like. And year 2, last year, ton of injuries, just horrible injury luck. And maybe the depth still isn't there, but early in the season, I do expect that defense to be better. SMU's case, he didn't really get a solid data point this past weekend. Didn't look great against Nevada, but maybe Nevada. Nevada's exceeded expectations 2 weeks in a row. Maybe that was more about Nevada. So I'm struggling with this one. Probably a pass for me. I think it'll be a solid data point for both teams. What are you seeing here?
SMU is turning into more of a mystery through 2 weeks, which is kind of troubling for somebody that loved their season win total over. I project the total at 52. So the fact that it's hanging around 55 and a half might be last call here for us to go get an under, with 55 being the biggest key number in totals. Let's talk about BYU first. They took on the Salukis from Carbondale, Southern Illinois. 8 of 12 drives had 2+ first downs. Available yards, 44% is the national average. BYU got up to 66%. That comes down to Jake Retzlaff at quarterback. 3 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays, no interceptions, a 13.5 average depth of target. Impressive. I know it's still Southern Illinois, but we didn't expect that from BYU. And SMU, they're going to have to defend Chase Roberts. He lines up at the wideout, he lines up at the slot. After one game, 4.4 yards per route run. It won't hang that high, but after 8 targets, he looks pretty good. And Southern Illinois, you spoke about Jay Hill. We love him coming in from Weber, one of the best defensive coordinator hires that we've seen. And, it just didn't play out last year. They have to get turnover in the roster. But BYU did prevent Southern Illinois from creating a methodical or an explosive drive. They only had a 28% success rate on passing plays, and they averaged 3.3 yards per play. So the BYU defense is coming around. I know it's Southern Illinois, but it's better than what we've had the last couple of years. Now, the SMU portion I spoke about, Stuck, you would think that you would see a pretty good balance of pass and rush. That's not what we had against Houston Christian. 54 attempts on the ground, 23 passing attempts. Jalen Knighton didn't even run the ball due to injury. Preston Stone went 6 of 9. Kevin Jennings only had 14 passing attempts. What is this SMU offense? Why are we running the ball against Houston Christian when we need to get this timing, this Rhett Lashley offense going? We're running the ball 54 times without your lead rusher. It doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. So SMU's offense is not executing at the level that we expected coming into this season. Nevada played great. They had a lot of pass breakups, I think 5 of them on the day. But Houston Christian to not even try to attempt to pass the ball and get your offense in rhythm is a little scary for me. The BYU defensive front, the strength is the secondary. The front is where you can attack them. So maybe SMU was kind of setting up like we want to get our run game going because we know this is where we can attack BYU. And for that right there alone, I think it's worth an under. Probably going to hit it here while we're recording. I don't want it to dip under 55. I think SMU is going to be run heavy again. The methodical drives, I lean to the under here, but something's up with this SMU offense.
Yeah, you at least do know that they want to go fast, which is the only scary thing with an SMU under. But I wish you luck there. I'll probably be on the sidelines for that one. But let's move on to second down and talk our favorite overdogs. For those new here, those are our favorite favorites. Thanks to a voicemail caller. Don't forget about the voicemail this week, 955-BAD-BEAT for the podcast. Our podcast, by the way, the rest of our college ball breakdown will be out later tonight, overnight. And we will have a recap episode, as always, that'll be out at the end of the weekend including voicemails and our live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday. And by the way, that'll be on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button. Yes, I'm talking to you if you haven't already. But let's move on to our favorite overdogs in second down. I'll kick things off. I'm going to go with Oregon. Going with the Ducks here. I think this is too much of an overreaction to what we saw last week. Just a really weird game against Idaho. They had 2 trick play touchdowns. Oregon's offensive line, they were starting right guard, who I think is going to be back this week, was out. They kicked the center to right guard. They had a walk-on starting at center. A couple guys on defense barely played. Some of their starters. Lanning said they're okay. It was just like they didn't really need them. So I think you get a really focused effort last week. Now, Oregon's offense still put up a ton of yards. They dominated the game statistically. Boise's defense, as we saw last week, still broken. They have a ton of experience returning, but that doesn't always lead to improved results. And Georgia Southern put up 45 on them. Situationally, also, I think that this spot favors Oregon. Second straight home game. They're able to sit at home. Boise State went down to Statesboro against Georgia Southern. They're, in the heat and humidity, their defense is on the field for 85 plays. Now you got to go up, second straight road game, play Oregon. That defense did not look good. Lanning's entire focus here is going to be, let's stop Ashton Jeanty, one of the best backs in the country. But going up against a Power 4 team, a lot different than going up against Mountain West foes. Maybe he breaks a few runs here, but I think we're getting Oregon on the cheap. This is one where I think the market overreacted too much. So with this line still under 20, I like Oregon at home. Where you go?
But I completely agree with you. I have Oregon over the total. And just a side note on that, I was told by somebody within the program at Big Ten Media Days, this is a bigger game than Oregon State. I still can't believe it. So within the program, I think they purposely went vanilla last week against Idaho for a reason. All right, I'm going to go Tennessee. It's funny. We made our selections. I usually make them like Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. About 10 hours ago, I said Tennessee -7.5 is going to be my overdog. That number's now 10. It got whacked today on Thursday, and I completely agree with it. I love the Volunteers here. They cruised over Chattanooga. NC State struggled with Western Carolina. So the question is, which one of those is real? Which one of these is fake? Is it a real variable that we need to inspect, and does it turn into a deliverable? And the answer from an NC State position is yes, there's a problem. NC State trailed Western Carolina in the fourth quarter to start it out. Grayson McCall had 9 pressures. 2 came from his blindside tackle, Anthony Belton. Now you're going to get James Pierce off the Tennessee defensive line coming at you when you gave up 9 pressures to Western Carolina. That's bad. 8 of 32 rushing attempts from NC State were stuffed by Western Carolina, that vaunted catamount defense that we all know about. And they got bailed out by Casey Concepcion. He just explosive saved the day in the fourth quarter. Dakari Collins had half of the team drops. It was a very unorganized performance. It was pretty terrible from a statistic standpoint in the trenches. And that's just not going to play out here. Western Carolina had 42 snaps in standard downs to 17 in passing downs. NC State just couldn't get them at long distances in third down. And I think that all goes back when you lose a player like linebacker Peyton Wilson, that's going to reflect on the rest of the team. I mean, that is a generational program player that has come through NC State, and now they're without him. The Catamounts did pretty well on offense, which nobody expected. So the question is, can NC State stop that spread of the Vols? That attack that they put on Chattanooga was disgustingly on point. The Volunteers are already in 5th gear. When they said that Nico was going to be able to, shoot it out on game 1, I was like, come on, game 1 he's going to be hot. He's already hot. And I think the other problem is Tony Gibson, who we love as the defensive coordinator with that 3-3-5. He exclusively runs cover 1 and cover 0. This is not the way to beat the Tennessee defense. It's always quarters, cover 3, stab him at the line of scrimmage, mess up the timing routes. Cover 1, you don't have 2 guys back in that safety shell that can stop that. I will say that NC State, Aiden White, the corner, had 2 PBUs at one spot, so maybe he can kind of stop Brew McCoy or Thornton or some of their dynamic receivers. I don't see it. This Volunteers offense is in 5th gear in the second game of the season, and NC State has massive issues in the trench, and they're not going to be able to stop this Tennessee offense. This one's a runaway. Tennessee, I don't care the number. 10, probably going to go 11. Take it.
I disagree with you, but we will. I tease. We will have that. We'll break that game down further on the main podcast, and I will provide my rebuttal. But let's move on to third down and go with our underdog moneyline parlay, our favorite moneyline underdogs of the week. I'm going to kick things off. I'm going to go San Jose State. Spartan up. This is just last week I went with North Texas in a game with a ton of variance, teams turning over their rosters, didn't know a lot about them. Well, we have that here as well. San Jose State, new coaching staff, a lot of new pieces, and Air Force. I mean, look, service academies usually just reload. They have huge rosters, but we still don't know a lot about this Air Force team, and they lost a ton, almost brought nothing back. So it could be one of those years where they are much worse than usual. Wasn't really impressed with their effort last week against Merrimack. Both these teams played in an FCS school, so still a lot of uncertainty here. Underdog against a service academy. Guess what? New head coach for San Jose State knows a little bit about defending the triple option, which he saw for many years at Navy. And you're probably going to have San Jose State's probably going to have the best player on the field in Nick Nash, who went off last week at receiver. Not sure anyone on Air Force can contain him. That could be the difference. Give me San Jose State. Where you go?
Love that pick. Sacramento State looked good for a quarter before they got blown out by San Jose State. I'm going to go Michigan plus 240. Yeah, we're going to do. I'm probably the only person with this ticket, but it's pretty easy to see why this number steamed, right? Michigan misses a cover with Fresno. Texas puts a 50 burger, plus no points given to Colorado State. You get all this steam in the market on a number that was below a field goal the entire summer. So it has really been a huge reaction. The Michigan defense, they're going to be able to flex one of the best defensive lines in the nation against the Longhorns. 13 pressures were created against Fresno. They should be able to get to Quinn Ewers here, put a little pressure on him, see if he can change his path of his passing and create some mistakes. The corners were just outstanding for Michigan. There was a PBU for Jair Hill, for Amir Hall, interceptions for Will Johnson and Zeke Berry. I have no problems with the secondary handling what Quinn Ewers is going to throw. He has issues with timing routes. He's good on go routes and slants. We'll see if Michigan can take advantage of that and stop Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Ryan Wango. They're talented, but Michigan does have a secondary that can keep up. Now, the Michigan offense is the handicap. I mean, the reason we're here is because we've been talking about this all season, and we got a little glimpse of what it's going to be. Davis Warren, 15 of 25, 9 of his targets straight over the middle, shallow over the middle to Colston Loveland. You and I talked about it on Twitter. It's the Colston Loveland dot map about where Davis Warren is going to throw. But when you combine that with the inside zone that's run on the ground by Khalil Mullings, he averaged 6.1 yards per rushing attempt, a huge 4.3 after first contact. That kind of caught my eye. So it's a very cramped offense that's going to take place in a real small footprint on the field. The inside zone is going to go straight at the worst part of the Texas defense, which is their defensive interior. Bill Norton, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton. Those are the defensive interior starters for Texas. They had the 3 lowest run defense grades of any player on Texas through week 1 against Colorado State. The trio created 1 stop and 27 Colorado State rushing attempts. The defense alone, you switch over to the pass, are they going to be able to get to Davis Warren? I don't think so. The defense produced just 7 pressures against Colorado State. Texas defensive line created only 7 pressures, 0 sacks, and 57 passing attempts by Colorado State. You could say, well, maybe Texas just went base defense and they didn't blitz anybody. I would still think a 4-man rush from Texas could create more than 7 pressures and record a sack. They didn't get anything done against Colorado State. I think the one thing other people aren't looking at, Davis Warren can throw the ball fast. 2.1 time to throw. He gets rid of it pretty fast. So I know it's short passes and it's little dump offs.
He's
but
just throwing to running backs. He was just there.
He's just tied in too. But I don't think you're going to get any sacks here. I mean, they're not going to get any pressures. They're not going to get any sacks. I think Michigan's going to have success here running inside zone and little dump offs over the offensive line. To me, this is Sharon Moore completely calling a service academy offensive game. They're going to nail this down to about 7 possessions. They're going to turn it into a rock fight. They're going to make the defenses win this game. And when you put it from that perspective, I trust the Michigan defense on a defensive line and in the secondary way more than I do that Texas secondary and this Texas defensive line that cannot stop the run. Look for Michigan to service academy it up. I like them to win outright.
All right, we'll have more. We'll break this game down further on the main podcast. But Moneyline Dogs, Michigan, and San Jose State. Before we get out of here, just 20 seconds on our favorite bets. I'm going to go Northern Illinois over 4 touchdowns against Notre Dame. Just historically, a lot of trends back this up, but a really bad spot for Notre Dame after that huge emotional win, physical game. Not a team that I mind fading as a huge favorite. Northern Illinois is worried about their quarterback play. They played nobody last week, but Ethan Hampton actually looked good. Ton of experience on this team. I think that they'll be motivated, right, in the area of Notre Dame, wanting to, a lot of these kids didn't get recruited there. So too many points here in what should be a lower scoring game. Give me Northern Illinois. Where you go?
Yeah, I agree. I'm going South Carolina, team total under 16.5. We mentioned it on the recap podcast. South Carolina is really bad. I will just, we'll have more on the main pod, but let me just talk about where South Carolina's average starting field position was against an Old Dominion team that they barely beat. First possession, they were spotted the ball on the Old Dominion 3-yard line. A couple possessions later, they were spotted the ball on the Old Dominion 25. In the fourth quarter, they were spotted the ball on the Old Dominion 6-yard line. Though those resulted in 17 of the 23 points scored by South Carolina. When you look at what their offense is, it's Lenoris Sellers running RPO with Rocket Sanders. That is not going to work against Kentucky's defensive front, who outside of Georgia may be the best defensive front seven in all of college football. They are that talented, and RPO inside zone is not going to work from South Carolina because you couldn't even run it against ODU. So give me South Carolina under 16.5 points.
All right, that'll do it for us. Again, make sure you check out the main podcast breaking down the entire slate, which will be out later tonight. Thanks for joining us again. Hit that subscribe and like button if you haven't, and good luck this weekend on all of your bets. Enjoy a weekend full of both NFL and college football. And quick self-plug, check out Action Network podcast for our NFL Week 1 breakdown. Good luck. Cheers.